Welcome back. Another holiday season is round the corner and this is the worry, another virus outbreak is being seen in China. 2022 is looking eerily similar to 2019. The Omicron subvariant of the coronavirus is spreading havoc across China. The official numbers are well manageable, but the pictures tell a very, very different story on the ground. Just take a look at some of the pictures that have come in. This video has been posted by Harvard expert Eric Ding. He's calling the situation thermonuclear bad. This video is showing an ICU packed with COVID patients. Some of them, as you can see, are being treated on the floor because there is a shortage of beds. Another video shows dead bodies scattered on gurneries at the hospital. There seems to be no doctor or nurse around. The bodies have simply been left unattended. Now, we cannot confirm the authenticity of these videos, of course, but here's what we can say. It's not just one health expert from Harvard who is saying this. Similar pictures and videos are emerging from across China. The cremation homes are dealing with a massive, massive backlog, almost 2,000 bodies, according to some reports, in one cremation house. Funerals are happening around the clock. It's almost like a repeat of 2020, except it's not happening in Italy or the US. It is happening in China. But like I said, the official Communist Party version is very, very different. It always is. The Chinese government has reported just 2,000 cases on Sunday, 2,200 cases on Saturday, and 2,000 cases on Friday. But those numbers don't add up if you look at the pictures and videos that are coming out. And these are Chinese citizens putting these pictures out in Weibo, which is essentially the Chinese Twitter. Clearly, China is going through a very bad situation. The question is, how bad? Let me tell you what health experts are saying. In a worst-case scenario, 60% of China's population could be infected in the next 90 days. I'm going to repeat that. 60% of China's population could be infected with COVID in the next 90 days. Along with that, 10% of the world population could be infected as well. If that happens, we are looking at a very, very high death toll, more than 10 lakh deaths according to some pandemic models. But what explains this sudden surge? It's a good question to ask at this point of time. China always maintained that things were under control. So where exactly did things go wrong? The simple answer is zero COVID. China's strategy was to stamp out the virus irrespective of the cost. All cases were quarantined and hospitalized even if there were no symptoms. The result? Most people in China do not have any immunity. Yes, they have been vaccinated, but they don't have antibodies from being infected. And there's a question mark on the vaccine as well. That's not the case in countries like the US, Britain, or even India. Many communities have built up immunity through a combination of vaccines and natural infections. Now, coming back to China, though, the flip side of zero COVID is the risk of even minor breaches. Even if there is a slight gap in the zero COVID bubble, there will be disastrous consequences. The virus will find itself in the middle of a cocooned population with no herd immunity. Sort of like the perfect breeding ground. And that's exactly what is happening in China right now. Another reason is the upcoming Chinese festival season. The Lunar New Year is around mid-January. Millions of Chinese citizens will travel home to be with their families. It's like a bit like Diwali. That means a lot of mingling, a lot of physical contact, and a lot of infections as well. Which is why health experts are predicting 3 winter waves in the next 3 months. The first wave is already unfolding in China. The second wave could be around the Lunar New Year, and the third wave could be around February and March. That's when people return to work after the holidays. To prevent that from happening, China will need to go into lockdown or build up more health infrastructure to deal with these rising cases. But for both these strategies, they will need to admit the problem first, not hide behind the facade of fake data as it always does. And speaking of data, let me tell you what the COVID numbers look like outside China. Starting with India, of course. Last week, India reported around 1,100 new cases along with 12 deaths. That is a record low since the virus started spreading in 2020. In late July, India was reporting more than 1.3 lakh cases every single week. So compared to that, the outbreak is being managed pretty well. The weekly death toll is also the lowest since March 2020. There are some days on which India has logged 0 deaths as well. So far, so good is how I would describe the situation in India. But we know what happens in China doesn't stay in China. Elsewhere, it's not going so well though. Japan, for example, is going through a very bad phase. The country reported more than 10 lakh cases in the last week, along with 1,600 deaths. South Korea reported more than 4.5 lakh cases in the same period. France logged 4 lakh cases last week, while the US has reported 2.5 lakh. The good news for Western countries is the trajectory. The infection numbers are high, but the pace is slowing down. So every government, including here in India, have an important decision to make. Should they close their borders to China or not? Should they brace for an impending wave of COVID-19 infections? Because they failed to do that in 2020, and we all know how that ended. The US government has taken note of this outbreak. They say it's a cause of concern to the whole world. Listen in to what the US State Department is saying.
First and foremost, anytime there is death and illness anywhere around the world, we want to see a situation like that come to an end. When it comes to COVID, secondly, we know that anytime the virus is spreading, that it is in the wilds, that it has the potential to mutate and to pose a threat to people everywhere. We've seen that over the course of many different permutations of this virus, and certainly another reason why we are so focused on helping countries around the world address COVID, and another reason why bringing this to a close in China would be beneficial.